The inspiration behind the 1201 Alarm Project comes from science, technology, innovation and endeavour. And at the heart of all these things is critical thinking, the ability to weigh up the facts and assess the evidence through which all modern progress has been made. I was delighted, therefore, that for the first of these special interviews, I was able to speak with the amazing James Randi. Now, Randi is probably best known as a magician and had a wonderful career spanning many decades, but he's also a very well-respected skeptic and co-founder of the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry. And he continued his work investigating the paranormal and pseudoscientific claims for more than 20 years after his retirement from the magical world. He holds many world records and countless awards, including the Richard Dawkins Award from the Atheist Alliance of America and a Lifetime Achievement Fellowship from the Academy of Magical Arts. And he even has an asteroid named after him, being a keen stargazer inspired by his friend, the late Carl Sagan. Now, Randi is the author of almost a dozen books and has appeared countless times on TV around the world, including a regular spot on The Johnny Carlson Show. And I really recommend checking out his film, An Honest Liar. It documents his career alongside a beautifully moving personal story of him and his partner, Davey. I really hope you enjoy our chat today. Andy, I'd like to start, if you would, just by talking a little bit about your early life. You were born in Canada, I understand. Are you still Canadian, or are you a naturalized American now?
Oh, I'm a naturalized American.
Naturalized American, but born in Canada in 1928. And I heard that originally you wanted to be an archaeologist, but you didn't have any formal education. Is that correct? You educated yourself? Can you tell us a bit about that?
No, not quite. I educated myself a great deal because I was one of those unhappy people known as child prodigies. And I say unhappily, very sincerely, because it was a very awkward time for me. In public school in Toronto, Canada, where I was born and almost raised, I found that the educational system, it was fine. It was fine. I have no complaints about it at all. In fact, I have a lot of praise for it. But being a bright kid, let's put it that way, I was ahead of the rest of the class. I had already read the textbooks, and I fell asleep in class frequently. And I don't know that I snored, but it was rather disturbing to have the fellow sitting at the far right corner of the classroom dozing away when the lesson was being given. And the Board of Education in my school made some sort of arrangement whereby I could actually be absent from school as long as I went in to write the tests and the examinations that came up, and I was kept thoroughly informed of those. And so I got to wander around the city of Toronto, and that was quite an education for me. More of an education than most of the other kids had, in a way, because it was practical. I could spend long hours, if not days, in the Royal Ontario Museum, ROM. Wonderful place. And though it's changed considerably, I visited it a few years ago. Some of the changes I don't quite accept easily, but the ROM is still there in all of its glory. And the Toronto Public Library, oh my goodness, if that was a place to which I had a special pass. I could go into the stacks at the back. Now that was sort of frowned upon by some of the employees there if they weren't used to my little shape rummaging around through books. Of course, latch onto me immediately and ask me why I was there and how I managed to get there, a few things like that. But that's the kind of education I had. So wasn't quite self-educated. But when it came time to go to high school, so I decided that I'd better, because I really had no idea of how my fellow human beings of the same age actually managed to make it from one day to the other. And so that was something I chose to do, and I enjoyed it. And I had wonderful teachers.
So then, of course, you somehow discovered that you had an interest in magic and illusions and escapology.
Yes.
Where did that come from? Where?
I discovered magic in a very peculiar way. Since I had a small pass, it was a little beige card about so big, and I've lost it years ago. But
Oh.
it's behind a piece of furniture. I know it is someplace, but I
Check
carried
down the
that.
back of the sofa. Is it down the back of the?
Oh yes,
It could be
I
anyway.
believe me.
You chat. Sorry,
Yes,
carry on.
yeah. So yes, I had this truancy pass, and I only had to show it twice to truant officers who were all over the streets of Toronto, of course, and they would come upon this little kid and say he should be in school, and I'd show them my card, and they'd have to go to the telephone immediately and call headquarters saying, "I've got this beige colored card and it says truant pass." They'd never seen one of these before. So I gathered that they were rather rare, that not every child that I saw in the streets
Sure.
was walking around with one. Uh, but that gave me a chance to explore such things as the Casino Theatre. Now, you've never heard of the Casino Theatre in Toronto. It doesn't stand there anymore. They built over it, apparently. Oh,
Shame. Yeah.
how time flies.
Yeah.
But I actually saw the great Harry Blackstone. I'm talking about Harry Blackstone Sr. now, not the son who succeeded him.
Okay.
They're both dead now, unfortunately. But old man Blackstone was great. I saw him do the levitation of Princess Azra, and he had a bit of a lisp. Did Harry Blackstone Sr. And he would say he would cause the lady to levitate in the air by means that only we know of.
Okay.
And she would be poised in the air there. And he would stop the music and step forward and say, "Ladies and gentlemen, you see this young lady suspended in the air before you with no support apparent. She could remain there, should I wish, for 1,000 years and a day. But in the interest of time and your patience, I will once again return her to the couch from which she rose only a moment ago. Azra, descend." The music would start up again, and she would slowly descend to the couch. I believe that happened 4 times a day altogether. That's quite a burden for the artist, of course, but I actually wandered backstage. I did that by going out of the theater and around the back alley, and I found old man Blackstone, good old Harry, with his wing collar open. In those days, no air conditioning in theaters, only circulating air, that's about it. And people all found themselves in the audience constantly. And Harry looked at me and, "What can I do for you, young man?" Well, he did a lot. He took me backstage, took me to his dressing room, showed me a poster of him levitating a camel, which I much admired.
A camel?
Pardon?
Did you say a camel?
A camel, yes. He didn't do that on the show, that particular show.
Okay.
It was one of the illusions that he had done. He had a poster illustrating it.
Right.
And he actually autographed the poster to Randall, that's me. And he signed it Harry Blackstone, rolled it up, tied a piece of string around it, and he guided me to the exit. And I went home. Now I had to get onto a streetcar, and then I had to get onto a bus at the end of that, because I lived in a northern part of Toronto, now part of the municipal city itself, Leaside. And I was very late getting home. No cell phones in those days, remember?
Yeah.
And my mother was standing on the porch looking for me and very perturbed. "Where have you been? I was going to call the police," etc. And I said, "Oh, Mama, I went to see Harry Blackstone, the magician, at the Casino Theatre, and he gave me a poster. I had left it on the bus."
Oh, no.
Now, someplace in Toronto, Canada, there may be a rickety old bus, a very old bus. And in the back seat, up against the wall, maybe there's still a poster there with my name on it. So if you're in Toronto, Canada, riding a bus, take a look.
That is worth going to Toronto, Canada, just to check out.
I want it back.
And
because I saw that poster again.
I'd love to return it to you if I ever found it. That would be amazing.
Well,
So, I mean, that made you become one of, I don't want to sound too gushing here, but one of the greatest magicians that we've ever known.
oh well, oh no, no,
I'm
you
going to
never.
say that. I'm going to
Yeah.
stick to that. You're not going to convince me otherwise. I've seen it.
I'm just in the magic fraternity and sorority now. Is that I was an escape artist, and I did more jail escapes, I think, than the other living escape artists. Since Harry Houdini had deceased a couple of years before I was born.
Right.
We didn't plan things very carefully in those days. And he died in 1926. I was born in 1928, a very important year. And so I never got to meet Harry Houdini, but I admire the reputation of the man. I read the things that he did, and I think I took a great deal of my skeptical attitude from him as well. I give him credit for that, if credit is due.
Indeed.
I think that the fact that he was very skeptical and that he offered a prize of his own for any spirit medium or any of the other clairvoyants or psychics or whatever of the day, fortune tellers even, who could actually produce. Um, I, I think I sort of molded a bit of my future on Harry Houdini. I thank you, Harry.
So did was that your passion, escaping, or was it illusions, grand illusions, or close-up magic, or were you just passionate about all of them?
All of it, of course,
Yeah.
because you have to have a little touch of everything in order to learn the whole art. But at Lachine, Quebec, I was working in a nightclub there, and did 2 shows a day, and I was doing the regular act. I was working with rabbits and things like that, and the act was going very well. And then one day after one of the shows, there were a couple of grumpy-looking gentlemen in the audience who called me over and showed me a pair of handcuffs. And I was appropriately awed by them. Now, by that time, I had already investigated handcuffs, and I knew that they were not all that difficult to remove if you had some knowledge of the inner workings. And I appeared to be genuinely terrified. And they said, "Could you get out of these?" I said, perhaps, but I've got another show coming up, and I have to go and prepare for that. Oh, all right. But when I did the second show, they were there. And when I walked down the exit stairs to the ground floor, they snapped me into a pair of handcuffs. So I asked if I could get in the rear of the car, of course, and I did. Then I got out the other side of the car with the handcuffs off. And that rather surprised them, to say the least. And so then they got a little grumpy and said, "Well, could you break out of our jail?" I said, "I have no idea. Show me the jail." And I thought, what am I doing? This is madness. And they drove me down to the jail. Well, the jail, I won't go into the details of it, but the jail lock, I think a lot of people could have figured their way out of that.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes, because it was a homemade job.
Right.
It was just 2 cells, one beside the other, and they locked me up, put me in the cell, and walked out, and I followed them out into the hall with the handcuffs off, and that made headlines. It said, "Lieutenant Randi s'évade de la prison de Quebec." The amazing Randy escapes from a Quebec jail. And when I got to the club that night, there was a lineup outside, and the manager came to me and said, "Don't do the rabbits thing. Forget about the rabbits. Do something escape-wise." And I said, "But I don't have an act that way. I can do something." I went out there and I fumbled around and I did something with some pieces of rope or whatever. I don't quite recall. But they kept me on for another few weeks at the club, to say the least. And very shortly after that, I got a call from the United States. I had not been to the United States, and they asked me across to do a show called Magic. Now, that was a very inventive title for a show. And Paul Tripp was the name of the MC of that. and that was my first television
That
show.
that's,
So
that sounds
that's
great.
the way
I
things
mean,
happen.
I'm an amateur magician myself. I would say up to enthusiastic uncle level. So,
Well,
but escaping from things always felt like it was too difficult for me and too dangerous as well. So I couldn't quite
it,
manage that.
it can be. You've got to learn to control the people who are with you on stage, and you can do it very pleasantly. You don't have to. I don't get many people all the way through my career. I've not gotten many people who come up on the stage to give me a hard time, though some have caused certain scars on my wrist
Oh
and
my
such.
goodness, really?
Oh yes, no good. I've managed with them. I I can still pick up a hot dog, and that's very important, of course,
Yeah,
and handle an ice cream cone with the other hand.
absolutely.
So
And you mentioned Harry Houdini, who obviously got you very much enthused by him. Was he what enthused you to get into debunking, or I should say, probably investigating? Because I suppose
investigate. So
debunking kind of preempts the outcome of that. Is that right?
that
Yeah. Okay.
I
So investigating is that what led you to become an investigator to these?
I believe that the influence of Harry Houdini, the mere name, and knowing his career, was much responsible for my get into the investigating business. Because we conjurers have a unique point of view. We know how people are fooled, and we know how to fool them. And we know how other people fool them as well.
Yeah.
And believe me, over the years, down through the years, as they say, I have come upon so many people who really needed my help. In many cases, it was too late to save the family fortune and a few things like that. But it's been very, very sad stories. Sad stories of families coming to see me and literally sitting around in the library and saying that their mother has, or their mother-in-law or whatever, has spent the family fortune and
It is.
doubled the mortgage and a few other things like that in order to pay off these charlatans.
Maybe we could talk about some of the things that you've debunked. I'm going to start off, if I may, with something that you mentioned in your book, Flim Flam, which is the Cottingley fairies, if that's okay, if we can talk about that. Now, I have a quote from you here. I don't know if you remember saying this, but I've got a quote. It says, you said, children are not smart enough to be fooled. And I love that quote. And does that mean that you're saying that the smarter we get, the better educated, the more experienced we are, the easier we are to be fooled? Is that,
We're
am
more
I,
sophisticated. Children are not sophisticated enough. No, I don't. I think I can do something here. I don't know what
oh,
I've got.
please do, please do.
Wait a minute here, just a second. I think I have. Yes, yes, I have a tissue Kleenex here. All right, I will roll this up into a little ball. Nothing up my sleeves except a pair of skinny arms and a cheap. And, that's a good view. You can see
I
that.
can see that. Yeah, it's great.
All right, very well. Now, here I have a bit of tissue here. It is rolled out into a small ball. Watch carefully. Oops. It pokes out. That gives it all away, you see. And
Brilliant.
I made all the beautiful practice stuff now, and I have another one here under my arm, which was exactly. Better
That's a,
put that away because I may want to blow my nose.
yeah,
These
amazing.
are very simple things, but you see, the children at a certain age, they don't see anything marvelous in that. That's what this man can do, and that's what he does, and he did it. Okay, ho ho ho. But they don't realize until they're a couple of years older. Wait a minute, that can't be done. It doesn't happen that way.
It,
How did he do that? And once they get to that point, you've got an audience. But before that, you haven't really got an audience because everything to the very young is magical. They don't know how the water comes out of the tap when they turn it, but they know that it does,
yeah.
and that's all they need to know at that point. But I think every now and then there must be a kid looking at that tap and says, "Wait a minute, water. Where does that water come from, Ma? Where does the water come from?" And if they ask that question, we've got a on our hands as a rationalist,
A
first of all,
rationalist.
and perhaps a skeptic as well.
And an audience. Yeah. Brilliant. So I mentioned I mentioned the Cottingley fairies because
Yes,
that was
yes.
the other way around. That was children fooling one of what I think was perceived at least as one of the finest minds of the age, which is Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Okay, maybe that's a stretch, but he was the brain behind Sherlock Holmes, so he was well respected at the time.
Arthur Conan Doyle was not as smart as he thought he was. He was a lord. A lord. He was Sir Conan Doyle eventually. But the point is, they make assumptions that once they get a degree or any kind of a mention, that means that they're automatically smart. No, not at all. I could fool Sir Arthur Conan Doyle very well. Now, Houdini, in one of his books, someplace along the line, he recounted an episode where Conan Doyle had called upon him in the Bronx, that's north of New York City, where he made his home at that time. And he had enjoyed seeing the little museum that Houdini had set up, mostly glorifying Houdini, I assure you. And they took a cab going downtown with Conan Doyle. Houdini just very, very lightly did the old thing of taking the thumb off,
Yep.
and doing this kind of thing. And, the thumb is gone. And Houdini took that seriously, and he wrote in his memoirs shortly after that. Now, this is the kind of thing that human beings cannot do, and yet Houdini does it so casually. This is how unsmart Sir Arthur Conan Doyle actually was. Now, I'm not making fun of. Yes, I am. I think I am making fun.
Do it, yeah.
Because he should have known better. He should have known that he doesn't know everything. But once he was lorded, of course, he immediately became aware of everything, and nothing could fool him. And he assumed that the Cottingley fairies had to be real because they were seen by two little girls. Little girls. Come on. What can little girls do?
Well, they produce photographic evidence. So,
yes.
So you can't argue with that, surely.
In the days of photography, remember? And
absolutely.
they even fooled their father for a short time.
Yeah.
And he became aware of it. I must say that Mr. He was not the sharpest knife in the drawer either, but he knew a good thing when he saw it, and he later benefited a great deal by selling for very fancy prices to the newspapers copies of the photographs that the girls had taken. Now he knew by that point that they were fake, and he knew how the girls did. Because they had a lot of failures along the line, and it was all done on glass plates in those days, and they just simply threw the glass plates away when the pictures didn't work well. And he came upon them, and he knew what was happening, so he was well aware of it, but he sort of joined in the farce as well. But I corresponded with Elsie, who was the older of the two girls, for quite some period of time, and she never quite admitted to me that they were fakes, but she did admit to the press yes, that they were fakes. But then the press wouldn't believe her because they had a good story. They didn't want a perfectly good story like this to go away. And there are people to this day who still support the idea that there were fairies. What's so big like this?
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like it was relatively easy for you to work out how two little girls fooled maybe not one of the greatest minds of his age, but somebody who thought he was. Was it harder to debunk, to find out what Peter Popoff was doing? And perhaps you could give us a little bit of background on that for people that don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, Peter Popoff still is.
Yes, that's a poignant word, is. We'll come back to that maybe.
On television, who at 3 and 4 in the morning, when time is very cheap on most of these smaller channels, he still rents time and he still carries on. He's put on a huge amount of weight. He's a big fat guy now, but he had a pretty svelte appearance back then. He still shows tapes of his early days because he can't get the audiences that he used to get after we exposed him. We exposed him, I must say, on the Johnny Carson show at that time. Johnny Carson, now deceased, unfortunately. I miss John a great deal. I can't tell you how much.
Oh.
But John was very fond of me in many ways, and I exposed a number of these so-called spiritualists and figures on his program over the years. And he was very surprised after his retirement. He used to call me every now and then, and he would say, "I just saw Popoff on television again. I was up very late at night," and he couldn't believe that Popoff was still in business. But these people are unsinkable rubber ducks. You sink them and they come right back to the top like that because people still want to believe. Not only that, they need to believe. They need to believe in heaven and hell and all the stuff in between and all the miracles of the Bible, etc. And I find that very unfortunate, and I think that it has held our species back a great deal. It had certain advantages at certain times early in our development as human beings, I'm sure. But then we should have grown out of it a long, long time ago. The whole idea of God and heaven and hell and whatever, that to me is a very, very old and strange idea. But Peter Popoff and the ilk of Peter Popoff, they maintain this because they needed that kind of mythology in order to attract victims.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to give people that perhaps don't know the story, you actually exposed Peter Popoff by finding that he was using a hearing aid, which is a very strange thing, first of all, for an evangelical healer to need. You would have thought he could lay his own hands on his ears and he wouldn't have needed a hearing aid, but apparently he needed a hearing aid. But in fact, it was his wife that was broadcasting through radio and telling, this is correct, right, that everybody in the audience, what their ailments were and variations like that, and you have him on tape, or sorry, have her on tape.
Oh yes, have her and him on tape simultaneously.
And she's a pretty unpleasant character herself, is that right?
She says, I have, no, not here. I used to have them right here, little cassette tapes that I saved as, I still have them, but I don't have them right in front of me here, that I saved just in case Peter Popoff or his ilk should decide to sue me sometime and try to extract money from me. He's very good at doing that.
I'm sure.
He'd like to try to do it with me, I'm sure. And we have, I won't say what she said on the tape, but she's talking to her husband, Nigel, on this little earpiece that he is carrying around with him. And she's saying horrendous things. I almost started to come up with some of them, but terrible things about the poor sick people who were in tears in the audience there with dreadful afflictions. And she's making fun of them. And she's saying to the companion she has in the room with her, the two of them are giggling and laughing over some abnormalities that these people have.
Sure.
And just making fun of them because they know that that's their breadbasket. They need that in order to make the money that they did. And they made millions, literally millions.
So going on to maybe somebody else that really got under your skin, and this is a gentleman that made a career out of bending spoons and metal objects. I think you probably know the guy that I'm talking about. Why did Uri Geller get so under your skin? I mean, was he not harmless compared to somebody like Peter Popoff? Or he seems to really get under your skin, Randy. Is that not right?
He ruined a lot of people's lives by changing their whole attitude about the paranormal and the supernatural. And he didn't get under my skin at all. I haven't noticed, at least. I have to look carefully. But no, I don't bother with people like Geller anymore. He's completely been debunked anyway, even on Israeli television. You actually see him put a gimmick on his thumb in order to make a compass move. And if you go to YouTube, and I encourage all of your listeners to go to YouTube and look up Uri Geller Exposed. And I think that you'll be very interested to see what happens there. Now, this is in front of his own people in his own country. He's now back in Israel as a resident, by the
Right.
way.
Okay.
And would his own people turn against him like this and put this sort of thing on YouTube and show him doing his trick? They actually caught him at it. You'd think that that would be a little unpleasant for him. But he's carrying on. Oh, my goodness, there's a wonderful site. And I unfortunately don't have the address of the site here. Well, if you look it up, you'll find a thing on Uri Geller where I guess he or his management has had them take out any reference to the word he, H-E, all by itself, or Uri, or Mr. Geller, and replace it with Uri Geller. And that means Uri Geller says that he, and they've taken that out, that Uri Geller says that Uri Geller is the greatest magician, or the greatest psychic, pardon me.
Yeah, absolutely not a magician.
Psychic in the world today. And Uri Geller has said this many times. Uri Geller, and it's all the way through this document, and you can see that it's been dubbed in. But what stupid statements come out of him, you know? Because of that. What a bad move. I don't know whether he knows anything about it. Maybe this is new to him. I'm not sure.
I don't know. What I did notice that he's no longer a psychic. I believe he's a mystifier. Is that right?
No, mystifier. Unfortunately for him, that doesn't translate into German, where he was at that time, still claiming to be able to bend spoon with his mind.
Yeah.
But I must say that he's got a very small repertoire. What do you do for a living? I bend spoons. You do that for a living? Yes. You will pay me to see that. Oh, really? Well, what I've always wondered about, from breakfast. I'm sorry, I have to have it. But
are you going to bend a spoon with your mind for us?
No.
You're not going to do that.
I'm not here as a performer. I'm here as an interviewee. No, I must say that when I pick up a spoon, you see, I pick this up with one hand. Notice? When Geller picks the spoon up off the table, he picks it up with both hands like this, so that you can't see it. And then he turns away immediately and walks across the room. And when he comes back, you can see that he's got his hands over the spoon like this. And then he starts to do this sort of thing, as if it's softening. And lo and behold, it breaks, or it is shown in a severely bent fashion. I don't need both hands to pick up one spoon. I wonder why Uri Geller needs two hands.
I can't possibly imagine why that is.
I'm working on it.
Okay, yeah. Let's. If anybody's got any ideas there, then let us know, and we'll get on. So moving on. I mean, another quote that I've got here from you. You said that people are deceived by other people and themselves, and
yeah.
Which one of those is more dangerous, and how do we defend against being deceived by ourselves?
Which one is more dangerous? It depends on the individual case, of course. But many people are convinced by simple magic tricks, conjuring tricks, I should say, because they're not really magic, they're conjuring tricks. It's a much better word to use. We don't use it in the United States much at all, but I think we should more. They can be misled that way into believing that some of these things are real. Now, I even get people after some of my lecture shows that I do, and they'll come up to me and, wonderful show, Mr. Randi, thank you very much. I'm very interested in seeing so-and-so, well, you did this and that. But what you told the lady her phone, you had never met her, that is ESP, right? And I look at her and say, no, that's a trick too. Oh, come on, I know what a trick is, and that can't be a trick. Yes, it is a trick of what we call mentalism. And it is not always easily done, but we manage to get it done. And the woman herself, or the man, whoever that I have deceived with this, and the audience, I always say to them, that was a trick, and it is called mentalism. I'm always very frank and open with them. I don't want them to go away believing that it was something that was really supernatural or paranormal. But some of the people, they get very angry and they turn away from it and they say, Mr. Randi, I didn't want to be lied to. I know that was the real thing. And they'll walk away in a great huff. And That's very disappointing.
It
Very
is.
disappointing.
Looking around the world today in the 21st century, are things becoming, because we are getting smarter, going back to what you said earlier, are we also getting, well, okay, as we are getting more experienced in the world, I've got to choose my words very, very carefully here. So we have all the knowledge that scientists and everybody have discovered since the beginning of time to call upon today, and we have access to it on the internet. Given the equation that you said earlier, are we actually becoming easier to fool? Are we looking to fool ourselves? I mean, it seems, because I'm looking out of my window here, right? And there's some trees over there. Now, even trees look like they've been designed. I can understand where people are coming from. You know what I mean? It's an illusion. They haven't been designed, but I don't know. So is it getting harder in the 21st century as we get more experienced?
To a certain extent, yes. If people would only understand the simple facts, and you don't need to know the whole thing, the simple facts of evolution. Evolution is the most logical and beautiful discovery, and I've never quite gotten over it to experience how people like Darwin and others came up with the wonderful ideas of evolution and proved it. Now, evolution is a fact. It's not just a notion in somebody's mind. And there are people on the other end of this broadcast, I'm sure, are shaking their head and saying, no, 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 evolution is nonsense. But that's a retreat. That's a retreat from the facts. If you look at the process of evolution, how things will generate spontaneously over billions of years, not millions, not thousands, no, billions of years in a cooling earth, which is slowly coming to recognize that it is a wonderful place, that wonderful things can happen. And some certain amino acids form naturally in nature. And from then on, it's relatively easy to see how small organisms could develop, things that could reproduce themselves. Now, on a very, very simple basis, and the billions and billions of experiments every second of every day of whatever length that were being performed that failed. But eventually, one of them is a very small experiment, a natural thing happening through the process of evolution, has to be successful. And if it's successful and it perpetuates itself and it can reproduce, we've got the beginning of life.
So really, for us, for the kind of geek generation, scientists are our new gladiators, in a sense, but they can be fooled, and I think you went out to prove that they could be fooled. We probably don't have a lot of time to go into. I'm referring to the Alpha project, but maybe you could allude to that briefly. But then my question really is if scientists can be fooled and they're our gladiators, what hope is there for the rest of us? I don't want to finish on a negative, but
one time many years ago at King's College in the UK, I did a demonstration. I think there were 5 or 6 prominent scientists there. And one of them, who I will not name, he's deceased, but I will still not name him. I don't want to embarrass his memory. No, I wouldn't embarrass his memory, so I'll quote him directly. I don't have the book here, but I know exactly what the quotation was. Mr. Randi, after seeing your demonstration, I don't know whether to believe you or believe in you.
okay, let me
No
just
flattering expression yet, because I fooled them. I fooled them, and I fooled them purposely, using the same methods of trickery that the conjurers do. But they were fooled, and they were pleasantly surprised to find out that they could be easily fooled by a little fella who didn't go to college.
So my final question that we mentioned before we actually started the interview is regarding our responsibilities. I kind of feel that all of us should be skeptics, all of us should be critical thinkers, if you like, amateur scientists in the 21st century. So what really are responsibilities, and how should we be skeptical, and to what level? What are our responsibilities in the 21st century?
Put it simply, think twice. There's an old saying. I certainly didn't originate this. It goes way back into history. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. So don't be beguiled by things that sound very good. I think I should put some money into that, or I should put some of my faith into it, or my efforts as a human being. Think of it carefully and ask for evidence, ask for proof. And if proof is not forthcoming, if you write to a faith healer and say you want some evidence of a miracle he has claimed, and you receive an answer saying, no, we don't have time today, or you receive no answer whatsoever, then you have discovered something.
James Randi, thank you so much for spending the time with us today. I can't tell you what a thrill it is for me to talk to you, and I'm sure everybody else to see what you've had to say to us today. Thank you so much for your time.
1201. 1201. Roger, 1201 alarm.